Alright, this is Joe Leigh here. 4 seconds out, delighted to be joined by Ben Davison here in Newcastle. Sun's out, got the sliders, or I don't know what they are, but yeah, chill out. You gonna go for a swim in the river or something?
Well, you never know, do you? Got to air them out. They could do with it, that's for sure.
Obviously here for Pat McCormack this weekend, tomorrow night. Second fight in Newcastle, second fight since turning pro, and obviously he's a big hope for the future, being an Olympic silver medalist.
Yeah, phenomenal talent, Pat. Everybody knows his amateur pedigree and that, but since turning over, the progression has been phenomenal, and I really do mean it and believe it that I think the UK has never produced a fighter like what Pat can be.
Yeah, cool. Just picking up Pat McCormack, as you say, 2-0. After the weekend, you'd obviously expect to win from that. How quickly are you looking to move him up?
I think someone like Pat, you have to take it step by step, because I had opponents in mind for fights 3, 4, 5, but at the minute he hasn't come back to the corner, he hasn't completed a round, so it depends on each fight, how much experience he gains, what questions are asked, what boxes are ticked, and take it step by step. But of course, you know, someone like Pat, we're looking to move quickly, but at the same time not rush it, make sure we take the right steps at the right time.
How exciting is it for you on a personal, as a trainer, to have these kind of long-term projects?
Like someone like Pat, even with his amateur pedigree, he's come in and it's almost like a clean slate. Professional boxing is something completely new. It's almost a completely different sport, and you're able to mould them completely to your own philosophy. And I think, especially with Pat, there's a few others in the gym, but especially with Pat, I just feel like when people say that fighter and coach gel, I feel like that philosophy's really clicked with him, and he understands the way that we see the sport. And that combined has created a career that I'm extremely excited for.
It's good to see the progression and look forward to seeing it. Obviously, Mark Dickinson as well. What's next with him? 3-0, 1 KO?
He, unfortunately, I don't know if he's put this out there, but one of his close friends had a family member pass away. So Mark's been out the gym, just being there for his friend. It was very unexpected, and so Mark's had a bit of time just at home, being there for his friend on a personal level, as opposed to in the boxing gym. So he's coming back down with me on Sunday, back into the gym. So we'll be looking at when we can get him out ASAP.
Stuff. And obviously Josh, the latest on him, we're obviously not sure, but he's going to be staying at the old super lightweight.
Yeah, he's going to be staying at 140. I think that ever since the fight, he's made it very clear what his intentions are. Obviously, straight after the fight, we talked about 147 because it was a really tough weight cut, and it always is a tough weight cut for him to make 140. But I think the fact that he's vacated the WBA, vacated the WBC, he's made it very clear what his intentions are, and he's looking for that Jack Catchall rematch.
How far are we away from that fight? With that being said, are there any talks being held?
Yeah, of course. Both teams will be looking at if, when, what, and how the fight can be made. I'm not involved in all of that, so yeah, you know, I have a rough idea of when we'll be looking, trying to make that fight happen. So that's what we're working towards.
Okay, and would that be back in Scotland, or is it going to be in England this time around? If you do know that,
we'll have to see.
Just quickly on like the wider scale, obviously Eubank Jr., Conor Ben, we're not sure how close it is to be inside. There's always things that hold things up in boxing, but if that fight happens, how big is it with obviously the history of both dads?
Huge fight. I think the people that are involved in boxing will buy into it. I think people that used to be involved in boxing will buy into it, and I think the people that aren't engaged in boxing will buy into it. I think that it's one of those fights that will capture the public's imagination. So much history there, and two guys that have got plenty of momentum behind them as well, especially Conor. So yeah, it's one it's definitely caught my imagination and my attention.
Who do you think would win that? Obviously Chris Eubank Jr. coming down in weight, Conor going up, maybe a catch weight of 154 and rehydration clauses, etc. Sorry, yeah, 155, 156.
Yeah, who would win that? I don't know, to be honest, because as I was saying earlier, like Eubank from before, more volume. That style that he used to approach the fights in, compared to what we've seen him in his last few fights, completely different night and day. I think that if he was to box how we've seen him box against Liam Williams and his previous couple of fights to that, then the physicality wouldn't be as much of a factor in that fight. I think that Conor Benn certainly punches hard enough to gain the respect of Chris Eubank Jr. And I don't think Eubank's the kind that really blows up and boils right down to middleweight. And I think Conor probably comes down from above what that fight would be getting made at. So, yeah, it's a fight that I'm definitely intrigued to see.
Who do you think would have more problem with weight issues? Because they're both face their own issues, being as that it's not their natural weight.
There's lots of factors to it, and obviously that's what's holding it up. If the rehydration was a lot higher than what one team wanted it, then and Eubank was going to use his physicality in tactically in the fight, then the weight might be an advantage towards him. But if he's going to boil down, he can't rehydrate as much as he would like, then the weight might play into as an advantage to Conor. So yeah, it's one of those we'll have to see. I don't know the ins and outs and all the details, to be honest.
Just quickly on AJ Usyk 2, it's on Sky Sports now, it's official, but in Saudi is where the rematch is going to be, and the second fight I feel like is more interesting for me, being as that I just got the new trainer, and he's also been in the ring with Usyk, so I guess he knows what to expect now. How do you see this second fight playing out?
I'm interested to see how Anthony Joshua goes about it. We don't really know exactly how he's going to go about it, but like you say, he's been in the ring with Usyk now. I'm sure he's got the footage there to be able to watch, which I know I've seen interviews and that of him saying how much he's watching it with Robert and Angel and the rest of the team, to be able to dissect it, go through it, become familiar with scenarios, situations, patterns, tendencies of Usyk. So I think that could massively work in his favour. And it's something I'm intrigued to see. It's a huge mega fight.
Two-part question. Obviously, what do you make of Robert Garcia being an addition to the camp, obviously alongside Angel? But what would you do in the rematch as a trainer, looking at obviously the first?
Oh, I've answered the question about 1,000 times of how I think he needs to approach it. And I think Robert Garcia brings a hell of a lot. It brings experience. I think a lot of people are saying that Anthony Joshua needs to apply pressure to Oleksandr Usyk, and Robert Garcia's fighters are known for bringing certainly lots of pressure. So if they go about it the right way, go about it the wrong way, I'm sure there'll be adjustments that Usyk will make as well, to say, do you know what, I can't afford to do that too much this time, I can't afford to do this, could have done this a little bit better. So forever, at elite level, adjustments are being made forever and all the way throughout, in between fights, in preparation for fights, and certainly leading into rematches, whether you win, lose or draw. So I'm intrigued to see how both guys go about the rematch.
Just a quick kind of in hindsight, or not in hindsight, if Usyk was to win that and fight Tyson, would that be one of the biggest fights of all time, being as that Usyk's obviously been at cruiserweight undisputed? I spoke to Krasik, obviously Usyk's promoter, and he mentioned that it would. Obviously he's going to say that, but what do you make of that fight?
Yeah, I think that somebody like Usyk, who's not tiny, very well coordinated, very agile, very intelligent. He's a hard man to beat, and he's trouble for all of the big guys. As we've seen. So I think probably still, whether Anthony Joshua loses or wins, Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua is probably a more lucrative fight and the bigger fight still, probably. But of course, Usyk goes and wins this fight. Him against Usyk, him against Fury, him against whoever is a massive fight.
Two more. Just one of them on Tyson. Obviously, he says he's fighting for 100 mil, says he's fighting for 500. And you said 500 mil, then nothing. And you said in the last interview that it kind of, it's tongue-in-cheek, take it with a pinch of salt. I kind of agree with that. Just, kind of explain what you mean. But it doesn't necessarily, he's not going to fight free. He's not going to probably get 500 million either.
I was just saying there before that everybody knows that he suffered with a bit of mental health. He probably is slightly bipolar. that is probably true, and I don't think that he's like saying it as a joke. When he's saying it in that moment, he means it. I've got a funny story actually. Like quite early on, me and Tyson was working together. We went for a run and climbed up the top of this this castle. We stood over there and he was talking about throwing his phone off the edge, and I thought, saying it tongue in cheek, he's joking now. Go on then, wallop through his phone straight over the edge of the castle. I was like, what are you doing? Like when he says something in those moments, he genuinely means it. Like if he said, I could run through that wall, and I went, nah, go on then. He genuinely does mean it. He probably would attempt it and try it. So when he's sitting there saying, I'll fight for free, in that moment, he probably does mean that. When he says, I'm going to have an exhibition, in that moment, he probably does mean that. So it massively does depend when you're trying to do business with Tyson what day you catch him on.
Yeah. And this is a bit of a deep one, but you see that kind of thing with like Kanye West as an example. But do you think that that's what makes him great? The fact that he has such highs and such lows, but that almost makes him such a great in what his profession is?
Well, in terms of my job, it certainly used to help because I would say to him, you can't do this, or I don't think you can do that, if I wanted him to do it, because I knew that he would at least push and give everything he can to do it. So I would use that to my advantage, that skill set, whatever you want to call it, that mentality. So I think I think if you know how to mould it and use it to your advantage, then certainly it can be an advantage. But of course, as we know, and we've seen him in a downward spiral before, that it can be negative as well. So it's something that you certainly have to be careful with. When I was training Tyson, I used to just have this vision in my head of a line with two sort of guidelines that you didn't really want him going too high out of the guidelines or too low out of the guidelines, because if he went too high, you knew he was going to crash, and if he went too low, you knew it was going to be a struggle to get back up. So I used to try and just keep him very much in the middle ground, like not let him get too excited about things, not let him get too down about things. Just man management. That's part of what I had to be at that time for Tyson, considering where he was in his life at that moment in time.
And with that being said, do you feel like that similar kind of personality trait when he says, I'm retiring after this fight? Obviously, he's stuck to that, I'm going to retire, but still now he's saying he's going to fight again. Do you feel like that's the same kind of trait coming out of, I'm never going to fight after this, now I'm going to fight Thor, now I'm going to fight 500? Do you think it's all kind of similar?
No, I don't. I think that when you've done a long training camp, like Tyson is coming towards the end of his career, not in terms of his capabilities, so I think very much he's in the peak of his career. I think his love for the sport, maybe, he's missed a hell of a lot, as all athletes do. Missed a hell of a lot of his family growing up. Missed out on being a dad, being a brother, doing normal person things that everyday people get to do. Going on holidays and these kind of things. So I think that as his family's growing, his kids are growing up, he's getting older, he's probably thinking, now's the time for me to enjoy the fruits of my labour. And that's not for anybody else to judge or to say that he's right or wrong in doing. If he feels like it's the right time for him to focus on those areas of his life, then nobody's got the right to tell him that he's wrong. So
this will be the last one. It won't be the title either. Just yes or no, do you think he will return?
I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a ring again, but at what capacity, I don't know. I think if Anthony Joshua wins, I think that certainly that'll be a fight that it'd be intriguing having, because he'll know the scale of the fight. I think if Usyk wins, from the way I'm gathering it, it doesn't look like something that he's overly too interested in. But I can also see him doing an exhibition or something like that, something that he could probably train for while being at home, and it's not the same level of intensity, or doesn't take as much out of you. Each time you step into a professional ring, even if the fight looks easy, the training camp it takes something out of you every single time. And we've seen so many fighters, you know, that's shown once they've finished boxing how much the sport has taken out of them. So the position it is in, he's leaving with all of his faculties intact. He's leaving with plenty of money in the bank, all the success in the world. So yeah, I can see him doing some exhibitions if he wants something to do. That might be his way of keeping something, a bit of focus, bit of routine, bit of structure in my life. So we'll see.
Look forward to seeing Pat on Saturday, and obviously everyone else at the rest of the gym.